Let me tell you something most people don't want to hear. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is not chasing, not begging, not explaining. Sometimes walking away quietly speaks louder than 1,000 arguments. You didn't fight for him, and that's silence. That's exactly why he remembers you. That's why he respects you. Silence is often misunderstood as weakness, but in truth, it is one of the most disciplined forms of strength a person can show. When you chose not to fight, not to argue, not to demand answers, you were exercising control over yourself, and self-control is power. Anyone can react emotionally. Anyone can raise their voice, send long messages, or try to force understanding. But it takes maturity to pause, to observe, and to decide that your peace matters more than proving a point. Silence is not empty. It is intentional. It is a decision to stop giving energy where it is no longer valued. In moments of conflict or emotional distance, words often lose their meaning. Arguments repeat themselves, explanations fall on deaf ears, and emotions escalate without resolution. Silence interrupts that cycle. It removes you from chaos and places you back into alignment with your self-worth. When you stayed quiet instead of fighting for attention, you were saying without words, I see what's happening and I refuse to lose myself in it. That kind of silence forces a pause, not just for you, but for the other person as well. It changes the dynamic because it denies them the reaction they expect. Silence also exposes truth. When you stop talking, stop defending, stop chasing clarity, the other person is left alone with their actions. There is no distraction anymore, no emotional noise to hide behind. Your silence becomes a mirror, reflecting their behavior back to them without distortion. In that space, they begin to notice what they took for granted. They replay conversations. They remember your patience, your presence, your effort. Silence has a way of making absence louder than arguments ever could. There is strength in restraint. Choosing not to fight doesn't mean you didn't care. It means you cared enough about yourself to step back. It means you understood that respect cannot be forced through words or emotion. True respect is earned when someone sees that you are willing to walk away rather than compromise your dignity. Silence shows that you are grounded, that your sense of value doesn't collapse the moment someone pulls away. That stability is rare, and rare things are respected. Silence also protects your energy. Fighting drains you. Explaining yourself repeatedly drains you. Trying to be understood by someone who is not listening drains you. By choosing silence, you chose preservation. You chose to keep your emotional resources intact instead of pouring them into a situation that was no longer reciprocal. That decision sends a powerful message. Your energy is not unlimited, and access to it is earned. People respect what they cannot easily access, especially when they realize they lost it through their own choices. Over time, silence changes how you are remembered. Loud arguments fade, emotional outbursts blur together. But the person who walked away calmly, without bitterness or drama, leaves a lasting impression. Your silence becomes associated with strength, self-respect, and emotional intelligence. It signals that you are not driven by impulse, but by principle. And when someone looks back and realizes you didn't fight to stay where you were undervalued, they understand something important. You didn't leave because you were weak. You left because you were strong. Self-respect is not loud. It doesn't announce itself or demand recognition. It shows up quietly in the choices you make when no one is watching, especially when it would be easier to settle, to stay, or to fight for something that no longer honors you. When you chose not to fight for him, you were practicing self-respect. You were saying, without explanation, that your value does not depend on someone else's ability to see it. And that decision immediately changed how you were perceived. People often confuse love with self-sacrifice, believing that giving more, tolerating more, and enduring more will somehow increase their worth in someone else's eyes. But the opposite is usually true. The more you abandon yourself to keep someone, the less value you hold in the dynamic. Self-respect disrupts the pattern. It draws a line and says, I will not shrink myself to be chosen. That line is not drawn out of pride or punishment, but out of clarity. And clarity is powerful. When you respect yourself, you stop negotiating your standards in moments of emotional pressure. You don't beg for consistency. You don't chase reassurance. You don't over-explain your needs in hopes that someone will finally understand. Instead, you observe. You measure actions against words. And when they don't align, you step back. That restraint communicates something strong. You trust yourself enough to walk away from uncertainty. That trust in yourself is what creates value, because it shows you are not desperate for approval. Self-respect also shifts the balance of power, not power in a manipulative sense, but in an emotional one. When someone realizes you are willing to leave rather than tolerate disrespect, they understand that access to you is a privilege, not a guarantee. That realization often comes too late, but it always leaves an impression. You didn't need to threaten or argue. Your boundaries spoke for you. And boundaries, when upheld consistently, demand respect even from those who didn't give it freely before. There is also a quiet confidence that comes with self-respect, and confidence is magnetic, not arrogance, not superiority, but the calm assurance of someone who knows who they are and what they deserve. When you didn't fight to be chosen, you embodied that confidence. You showed that you are complete with or without someone else's validation. That independence reframes how others see you. Suddenly, you are not someone to be taken lightly. You are not someone who can be ignored without consequence. Self-respect teaches others how to treat you, not through lectures, but through behavior. When you stay in situations that diminish you, you teach people that your limits are flexible. When you walk away from them, you teach people that your presence is conditional upon respect. That lesson lingers. Even if someone doesn't change immediately, they remember it. They remember that you didn't tolerate being half chosen or inconsistently valued, and that memory reshapes their perception of you. Ultimately, self-respect creates value because it aligns your actions with your worth. You didn't say you deserve better, you demonstrated it. You didn't demand respect, you embodied it. And when someone looks, attraction is not built on pursuit, it is built on presence, confidence, and mutual desire. The moment chasing begins, the balance shifts. When one person runs harder while the other pulls away, attraction quietly erodes. By not chasing him, you disrupted a pattern that weakens respect. You refused to convince someone to want you, and that refusal carried more weight than any emotional plea ever could. Chasing may come from care, but it communicates insecurity, and insecurity never sustains attraction. When you chase, you unintentionally send the message that your happiness depends on the other person's response. That pressure suffocates connection. It turns love into obligation and desire into responsibility. The person being chased may not even realize why their feelings change, only that something feels off. Attraction thrives when both people choose each other freely, not when one is trying to pull the other back into alignment. By stepping back, you allowed space, and space is where desire either grows or reveals that it was never real. There is also a psychological shift that happens when chasing stops. The absence of pursuit creates uncertainty, and uncertainty forces awareness. When you are no longer available on demand, no longer reaching out to fix things, the other person begins to notice the void. They start replaying moments, questioning assumptions, and wondering why you didn't chase like they expected. That curiosity can reignite attraction, not because of manipulation, but because your self-restraint made your presence feel earned rather than guaranteed. Chasing blurs your identity. You become reduced to someone seeking approval instead of someone standing in their truth. When you don't chase, you preserve who you are. You remain grounded, whole, and self-directed. That stability is attractive because it signals emotional security. It tells the other person that you are not controlled by fear of loss, but guided by self-respect. People are drawn to those who are anchored in themselves, not those who abandon their center to hold on to someone else. Attraction also requires mystery. When you chase, you reveal everything. Your fear, your attachment, your need for reassurance. There is no room left for discovery. By not chasing, you allowed mystery to return. Your silence created unanswered questions. Your distance invited reflection. Mystery doesn't mean playing games. It means allowing someone to wonder about you instead of knowing you will always be there no matter how they behave. That wonder keeps attraction alive. In the end, not chasing wasn't about strategy. It was about alignment. You chose not to pursue someone who was not matching your effort. That choice protected your dignity and preserved your allure. Even if the attraction didn't return, the respect did, because you didn't chase a version of love that required you to lose yourself to keep it. Boundaries are not ultimatums, and they are not punishments. They are quiet declarations of what you will and will not accept. When you didn't fight for him, when you didn't argue your worth or explain your pain repeatedly, you were setting a boundary without ever having to announce it. You showed through action that access to you requires respect, consistency, and effort. That kind of boundary doesn't need justification. It stands on its own. Most people believe boundaries must be verbalized to be effective, but some of the strongest boundaries are behavioral. You didn't send long messages asking for clarity. You didn't stay in conversations that went in circles. You didn't keep showing up where you felt unseen. Instead, you withdrew your presence. That withdrawal wasn't cold or cruel. It was intentional. It communicated that you recognize when something no longer aligns with your standards, and you are willing to step away from it. When boundaries are upheld calmly, they change how others engage with you. There is no drama to distract from the message, no emotional reaction to dismiss or manipulate. Just a clear consequence, your absence. That consequence forces awareness. It teaches others that your time and energy are not endlessly available. Even someone who didn't respect your words is forced to respect your actions, because actions cannot be argued with. Boundaries also protect you from self-betrayal. Fighting to stay often requires you to overlook behavior that hurts you, to minimize your needs, or to rationalize inconsistency. By not fighting, you chose honesty over comfort. You acknowledged that something was wrong and refused to pretend otherwise. That decision reinforces self-trust. And when you trust yourself enough to uphold boundaries, others begin to sense that you are not easily swayed or manipulated. There is strength in not explaining yourself to exhaustion. Over-explaining often comes from a need to be understood, but boundaries don't require understanding. They require respect. You didn't need him to agree with your feelings. You didn't need validation for your decision. You simply acted in alignment with your values. That kind of certainty is unsettling to those who expected you to bend, but it is deeply respectable. Over time, boundaries redefine how you are remembered. You are not remembered as someone who tolerated confusion or inconsistency. You are remembered as someone who knew when to step back. Someone who didn't argue for basic consideration. Someone whose presence had weight because it wasn't given away freely. That memory lingers because boundaries backed by action leave a permanent impression. Absence creates a space that words never can. When you stopped fighting, stopped reaching out, and removed yourself from the dynamic, you left behind a silence that demanded attention. That silence wasn't empty. It was filled with memory, contrast, and realization. Your absence forced him to confront what your presence had been providing all along: stability, understanding, effort, and emotional availability. Things often feel invisible when they are constant, but once they are gone, their value becomes undeniable. When someone no longer has immediate access to you, they begin to replay moments they once overlooked. Small gestures resurface. Conversations gain new meaning. The way you listened, the way you showed up, the patience you offered, all of it becomes clearer in hindsight. Absence removes the comfort of assumption. It breaks the illusion that you would always be there no matter what. In that break, reflection begins because the mind tries to understand loss before it accepts it. Absence also eliminates distraction. While you were present, your energy may have softened consequences. Your willingness to stay may have delayed accountability. Once you were gone, there was no buffer left, no emotional safety net. Just the reality of his choices and their outcome. Reflection grows when there is no one left to blame, no argument to deflect, no reaction to provoke. Your absence created that reality, and reality has a way of cutting through denial. There is also a shift in power that happens through absence. Not power over someone, but power within yourself. You reclaimed control of your time, your focus, and your emotional space. That reclaiming doesn't go unnoticed. It signals that you are not defined by someone else's attention. And when a person realizes they no longer have influence over your emotions, it changes how they view you. Respect often grows in the presence of distance, not closeness. Absence invites comparison. Life continues, but it feels different. Interactions feel shallower. Conversations lack depth. The contrast between what was and what is becomes apparent. In that comparison, reflection deepens. He may begin to recognize that not everyone brings the same level of care, patience, or authenticity that you did. That realization doesn't always lead to reconciliation, but it almost always leads to respect. Reflection takes time, and absence provides it. You didn't rush his understanding. You didn't demand acknowledgement. You allowed space to do the work that words could not. And in that space, your absence became a lesson, not spoken, not forced, but felt. People rarely remember every detail of what was said during emotional moments, but they always remember how someone carried themselves when things fell apart. Strength leaves an imprint. When you didn't fight, didn't beg, and didn't lose your composure, you showed a level of emotional discipline that is not easily forgotten. That restraint became part of your identity in his memory. The person who chose dignity over desperation. Strength is often revealed at the point of loss. It shows in how someone responds when they are disappointed, when expectations collapse, and when attachment is tested. You could have reacted emotionally. You could have demanded answers or tried to hold on tighter. Instead, you stood still and let go. That moment of self-command speaks louder than any grand gesture. It signals that your sense of worth is internal, not dependent on someone else staying. What makes strength memorable is its rarity. Many people fall apart when faced with rejection or uncertainty. Few remain composed. Few walk away without bitterness. Your calm response set you apart. Even if it was misunderstood at first, over time it becomes clear you weren't indifferent. You were grounded. That grounding is what lingers because it contrasts sharply with chaos and emotional volatility. Strength also reshapes narrative. Instead of being remembered as someone who pleaded or waited, you are remembered as someone who knew when to step back. That narrative carries respect. It reframes the entire experience. You are not associated with drama or conflict, but with clarity and self-respect. That clarity makes people rethink their assumptions about you, and often about themselves. There is also a quiet lesson embedded in remembered strength. It challenges the other person to reflect on their own behavior. Your ability to walk away without resentment highlights what they lacked in the moment: awareness, consistency, or readiness. That contrast can be uncomfortable, but discomfort is often where growth begins. Even if nothing is said, the lesson remains. Over time. Emotions settle, but impressions remain. And the impression you left was not of someone who fought to be chosen, but of someone who chose themselves. That strength becomes the final memory, steady, composed, and undeniable. And here's the truth that settles in: long after the emotions fade, you didn't lose anything by not fighting. You revealed who you are. You showed that your love comes with standards, that your presence is earned, and that your self-worth is non-negotiable. Walking away with composure wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a declaration of strength. And strength like that doesn't need to be explained. It's felt, it's remembered, and it quietly defines how you are valued long after you're gone.